Some people enter a place and change everything without saying a word. The environment calms down. The air feels lighter. People relax, even without knowing why. These people do not draw attention, but they have a presence that speaks to the soul. They do not need to assert themselves. They simply are. They are the chosen. You recognize a chosen one by the way they care, listen, and protect. By the way they see beauty in the pain of others, without judgment. By the calm they convey even when everything is in chaos. But what few people understand is that behind this sweetness, there is a hidden strength. A strength that only appears when it is truly needed. The chosen do not live to prove anything. They do not shout to be heard. They do not retaliate impulsively. But when they are tested, when they are consciously and repeatedly hurt, something inside them changes. Not because they seek revenge, but because the truth they carry needs to manifest. And this truth carries the weight of something greater. Today you will understand why these welcoming souls are also the most intense when they reach their limit. You will discover why, when a chosen one decides to distance themselves, the structures around them begin to crumble. And you will realize that behind the calm lives a spiritual justice that does not negotiate with falsehood. This video is not for everyone. It is for those who feel they have given too much and have been misinterpreted. For those who love with presence, but also know how to cut firmly. For those who do not fight, but also do not submit. And if you recognize yourself in this, you may already know you are not ordinary, and this is a calling. If this content touches something inside you, I invite you to stay here. But not for the algorithm, nor out of habit. This channel exists for those who carry an awakened soul. Here, you do not need to hide. Here, your light is understood, and your firmness respected. Welcome to the place where the sensitive are finally seen. Some people do not need to speak much to transform the environment. They arrive, and somehow, everything starts to reorganize. The tension decreases. Hearts slow down. It's as if their energy is an invisible hug. They do not make an effort for this. It is natural. It is part of who they are. These people are the chosen. Being near a chosen one is to feel welcomed, even without understanding why. There is something in their presence that calms, without promising, that listens without judging, that perceives without invading. They do not force connection. They simply connect. And those nearby feel this in their soul, not in logic. They have an energy that heals without medicine, consoles without words, strengthens without pressure. This happens because they carry a living truth within them. Not a truth learned from books, but felt in the flesh, in losses, in silences, in the faith that is built in the invisible. But this same energy that welcomes also reveals. The light of a chosen one does not only illuminate what is beautiful, it also shows what is hidden. Being near someone like this can be liberating or uncomfortable. It all depends on how the other person deals with the truth. Because where they go, masks do not last long. Not because they want to unmask someone, not because they judge, but because their energy vibrates with authenticity, and everything that is not true begins to creak as if it were out of tune. Lies, falsehood, ulterior motives, none of this survives long near them. The chosen do not need to point fingers. They do not expose, do not accuse, do not shame. But their presence acts like a mirror that shows quietly what is misaligned. And often, just this is enough to provoke strong reactions. Some people feel relief next to them, others discomfort. Some open up, others withdraw. Because facing the truth can be beautiful, but it can also be challenging, especially for those who are used to living hidden behind personas. A chosen one, does not need to say, "I know." Their gaze already carries that phrase, and not with arrogance, but with clarity. They see what others try to hide, and even seeing, they continue to love. They continue to embrace, until it is no longer possible. This kind of energy is rare, because it mixes sweetness with discernment, love with limits, presence with lucidity. And for this reason, the chosen are so special, and sometimes so misunderstood, because they heal without promises, but also awaken without asking for permission. Being in the presence of a chosen one is an invitation to the truth. It is as if the universe says, "Are you ready to see things as they really are?" Not everyone is, but those who are, never forget. They do not carry judgment in their eyes, but they carry depth, and depth requires truth. There is no room for games, manipulations, or masks. There is only room for the real, and the real, when it arrives, heals, even if it hurts beforehand. If you are a chosen one, you may have already experienced this without being able to put it into words. You may have already been pushed away by those who could not stand to be seen entirely. But this is not your fault. It is the natural effect of your light. And if you have ever felt that someone was able to heal you just by their presence, now you understand why. The soul recognizes what is true, and the chosen are truth walking in silence. The chosen tend to be patient, much more than most people expect. They listen without interrupting. They wait without pressing. They forgive even when they could walk away. And often, they continue believing in the best of people, even when they have been hurt more than once. But do not be mistaken. This patience is not weakness. It is a conscious choice. It is an expression of the spiritual maturity that these souls carry. They understand that every human being is in process. They know that some people only learn over time, not through confrontations. For this reason, they often choose silence instead of reaction. The chosen do not like to fight. They avoid unnecessary confrontations. They prefer the path of peace, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. They know that noise doesn't always solve problems, and they know that when the truth is strong, it stands on its own, without shouting, without attack, without exposure. They give space for the other to reflect. They offer second chances, sometimes even third chances. Not because they are naive, but because they trust in the capacity for transformation. They believe that every person has a turning point, and they sincerely wish for that to happen. But every patience has its limits. And when the chosen realizes that they are being disrespected in a conscious, repeated, and abusive way, they change. They do not explode. They do not scream. They simply shut down. And this shutting down is definitive, because it comes from an internal place that has already tried everything. When a chosen one distances themselves, it is not an impulse. It is a decision. A silent but firm decision. They know what they gave, what they endured, what they tried. And when they realize that their energy is being drained, that their love is being confused with weakness, they withdraw. And this withdrawal hurts for those who remain, because the chosen are irreplaceable. Their absence reveals how much their presence was sustaining. What seemed normal begins to crumble. The harmony that existed disappears. And then people realize the patience of the chosen was what held everything together. Their silence speaks loudly, and their distancing teaches more than any discourse. Not as punishment, but as consequence. Because those who act with love are not asking for anything in return, but they are also not available to be used. The chosen know the value of their presence, and as much as they love deeply, they have also learned to protect themselves. They know that their light needs to be cared for, and that one cannot remain in places where the energy is constantly disrespected. The patience they offer is sacred. It is the expression of a soul that has chosen to believe in humanity. But when this choice is constantly dishonored, it transforms, not into anger, but into wisdom, into self-preservation, into withdrawal. If you are a chosen one, you may have already experienced this. Having given everything, having expected too much, having believed when no one else would, but also having felt one day that it was time to stop, time to prioritize yourself, time to protect what still remained in you. And if you have ever lived with someone like this, never confuse calm with weakness, never confuse love with submission. The chosen are good, but not foolish. They are patient, but not infinite. And when they decide to leave, they do not return with half a heart. Their patience is a gift, but it is also a thermometer. It shows how far they can go for someone. And when it runs out, it is a sign that they have already done more than anyone would, not out of obligation, but out of love. The chosen have a protective nature. When they perceive someone in suffering, they cannot ignore it. They feel as if they are responsible for welcoming, guiding, and defending. They do not seek recognition. They act on instinct, as if it were an inner calling. Their presence becomes a shelter for those who have no voice, and this makes them pillars in many homes, groups, or friendships. They easily put themselves in the place of others. They know how to listen without haste and embrace without judgment. They tend to be present in the most difficult moments, even when they are not called. The energy they carry has something maternal about it, even in men. They are there, steadfast, even when no one else has the strength to stay. However, protecting others does not mean forgetting oneself. And this is one of the deepest lessons of the chosen. For a long time, they give, sustain, and carry everything on their backs. But there comes a point when they realize that they also need to protect themselves. They also need to be cared for, respected, and recognized. This turning point usually happens after a limit has been crossed. When they realize they are being used or emotionally drained, something changes. They understand that continuing to support the other means abandoning themselves. And then, for the first time, they put themselves first, not out of selfishness, but out of self-awareness. This decision often surprises those who have always had them nearby. The world gets used to the giving nature of the chosen, but forgets that they also have limits. When they withdraw, the environment feels it, because the structure they silently maintained starts to crumble, and then it becomes clear how fundamental they were. Protecting oneself, for a chosen one, is a spiritual act. It is the moment they understand that their light cannot be given to just anyone, that their energy is sacred, and that, to continue healing the world, they need to care for their own energetic field, their own emotions, their own silence. When they cut ties, they do not do it on impulse. They make this decision after numerous attempts to maintain harmony. But when they realize that their well-being is at risk, they leave firmly. And even if sad, they do not look back, because they understand that protecting themselves is also a way of teaching. If you recognize yourself in this, know your love is valuable, but your limit is also valuable. Learning to protect yourself does not diminish your light. On the contrary, it shines even brighter when you choose where, how, and with whom you wish to share it. The silence of a chosen one is not absence, it is presence in the form of a boundary. When they become silent, it is not because of a lack of words, but because of wisdom. They have already said everything they could, have already offered all chances, have already shown with gestures what many did not want to see. And then, they choose silence as protection. This silence does not come from pride, it comes from awareness. The chosen understand that continuing to speak with those who do not listen is a waste of energy, that insisting on being understood by those who do not want to understand is opening the space for more frustration. When they realize this, they choose to withdraw, and with it, the silence that teaches. Being silent for them is a way of respecting themselves, of taking care of their own soul, of their own emotional field. They do not use silence as a weapon, but as a shield. They do not withdraw to harm, but to avoid being harmed further. It is an act of self-preservation, and at the same time, a clear message. This message is felt, because the presence of a chosen one has weight, has healing, has impact. When they distance themselves, the difference is noticed immediately. The environment changes. What was once light becomes tension. What was harmony becomes confusion. And then many realize how much this person was sustaining, even in silence. The most interesting thing is that the chosen do not announce it. They do not dramatize. They do not create scenes. They simply leave. And they leave with dignity. They leave with the certainty that they did everything they could. And when they decide not to return, it is because they understood that continuing would mean abandoning themselves. Those who have lost the presence of a chosen one know how heavy this is. Because it was not just a person who was there. It was an energy of balance. A silent light that kept the environment alive. And when this light goes out, the void that remains speaks louder than any discourse. The chosen know that silence has power, and they use this power wisely. They are not about threats. They do not need that. They know that time reveals everything. They know that absence reveals more than 1,000 arguments. And they trust the truth they carry in their hearts. This silence, many times, is the last gesture of self-love. It is when they decide to take care of themselves after spending so much time taking care of others. It is when they realize they deserve peace, not explanations. They deserve real presence, not empty promises. And then they withdraw with dignity. Even in silence, the chosen continue teaching. They continue vibrating their truth. Those who pay attention notice. They notice that silence is not coldness. It is maturity. It is proof that they prefer distance to falsehood. That they choose the lightness of solitude over the weight of forced companionship. If you have ever remained silent after insisting too much, know that this was not weakness. It was strength. It was spiritual wisdom. And if you have ever felt the silence of someone like this, you may have learned more from their absence than you would have from any explanation. Because silence, sometimes, is the purest truth. There are moments in a chosen one's life when they must make the hardest choice of all, to choose themselves. Not because they want to withdraw from the world, but because they finally understand they can no longer dim their light so that others can shine. They can no longer hurt themselves just to make someone else comfortable. That choice doesn't come from pride. It comes from exhaustion. From a soul that has given too much, listened too much, carried too much. That has been the shoulder, the calm voice, the steady support. And deep down, all it ever wanted was to be seen in the same way it saw others. All it ever longed for was reciprocity, not worship, not perfection, just truth. The chosen one loves with presence, loves with patience, loves with full surrender. But they also need to be loved with care. And when they realize they are always giving, always yielding, always waiting, while the other only receives, there comes a time when the weight becomes unsustainable. At that point, the soul begins to scream in silence. The body starts to feel it. The mind, no matter how rational it tries to be, realizes something is out of balance. And then, with the same gentleness with which they once gave themselves, the chosen one starts to retreat. Slowly, quietly, without warning, without anger, just with awareness. Those who were used to their constant presence, their unconditional giving, are surprised, because when the chosen one puts themselves first, the dynamic shifts. They begin to filter, to observe, to protect their energy, not out of spite, but because the cycle has ended. This new position doesn't make them cold. They remain empathetic, loving, and deep, but now with boundaries, now with discernment, now with clarity. They learn that those who truly deserve their light will recognize it and take care never to let it go dim. What once was emotional chaos becomes silent wisdom. What once was insistence becomes calm observation. What once was blind hope becomes sharp perception. The chosen one doesn't stop loving. They simply learn to love better, starting with themselves. And in this new phase, they attract different kinds of connections. People who don't drain them, but add to them. Who don't demand, but give. Who don't fear their depth, but celebrate it. Who aren't intimidated by their intensity, but are drawn to it, because they see the value of the soul they carry. When a chosen one meets another awakened heart, everything changes. There is no power struggle, no mind games, no fear of being too much. There is alignment. There is peace. There is truth. Because finally, the energy finds shelter, a place where it doesn't need to hide or explain, a place where it can just be. If you're still in the phase of cutting ties, stepping back, or staying silent, don't blame yourself. You're just making space for this new cycle to begin. A cycle where your light will be respected, your intuition heard, your heart held. Until then, everything you're feeling is part of the path. You haven't lost your kindness. You've just learned to protect it. You haven't stopped loving. You're just loving with more awareness now. And that is growth. That is spiritual maturity. That is what sets the chosen ones apart. The ability to keep walking in faith, even when the world tries to silence them. Your light isn't inconvenient. It's revealing. And not everyone is ready for that. But those who are, they will see you with the eyes of the soul. And they will care for you the way you deserve. That's what this has all been about. Loving without losing yourself. Giving without breaking. Feeling deeply. And still knowing when to stop. Because chosen ones weren't born to dim themselves for anyone. They were born to shine. And also to know when it's time to retreat.